Testing, testing. Does this sound any better? It's still a little echoey. We got some treatments up on the wall. We've got a Bluetooth microphone. Let's see if this is any better. Hey, what's going on, YouTube audiophiles out there? We're back at you with another integrated amplifier review. We've got the Bass Labs INT 250 up here that I was able to get a hold of. If you watched the Boulder 866 review, at the end you may have noticed that I was trying to get a hold of a Gryphon Diablo 300 at that time. It was not the new 333, but it was the outgoing model, the Diablo 300, or the Bass INT 250, and both are a little more difficult to get a hold of, and you don't see a ton of them out there for sale on the pre-owned market either. So I wasn't sure which one I was going to be able to get a hold of, but as you can see, we were able to come upon the Bass INT 250. One of the things that I did want to point out, though, this was never really on my radar. I think that locally here I was able to get the Diablo 300, and so that was my next stop after the Boulder 866. And I was actually able to listen to that here locally on several occasions, and I came very close to purchasing that Diablo 300. I had actually gone in on my last audition, I guess, if you will, to basically put the order in, and actually took my wife and my son there, and we were listening for probably a good hour, and we both left saying, you know what, let's think about this purchase. We actually kind of changed our minds, or I changed my mind on the way that sounded. And I didn't actually end up purchasing that Diablo 300, and I'll just share a quick few examples on why. It seemed very forward to me in the presentation. So if you remember in my past reviews, if you watch those, I ended up kind of trying, this is all new to me, so I found out, what I like personally, and I was looking for a little bit more warmth in the presentation, a little bit more softness. And that's kind of a fun thing exploring this audiophile hobby too, is, finding out exactly what you like. And I say it's fun, part of that, it's actually a little bit frustrating too, I suppose, at least it was for me, because sometimes it is hard to get these pieces in your space and be able to audition them. But anyway, finding out kind of what I liked, and over the course of, a few months, then going back in and listening to the Gryphon, it's like, you know what, I don't know that this is exactly what I'm looking for. And this is how close it was. I actually lost some money on this decision too, because I was going in to order the Diablo 300. I had actually purchased the deck because that's how confident I was that I was going to buy this thing. And they're separate pieces if you're looking at those. And I believe it's still that way with the Diablo 333. So I actually purchased the DAC to be able to either install myself, because it's just plug and play, or have someone professionally install that DAC for me. But anyway, I went in, listened to it, and thought, well, let's put the pause and put the brakes on this decision. And what I found out from that last listening session with it, and just come to realization for myself and what I was looking for, was very forward. It seemed like a lot of that sound from that Gryphon was coming out of the mid-range of the speakers. It was very in my face, very forward, however, very accurate. If I could equate it to an example of a listening session, it is very true and lifelike to a live amplified event. And what's interesting is I left that audition and went outside, and the place where I had the opportunity to listen to it, there was actually an outdoor live musical event going on. And, those are fun. They sound great. It's fun. They're outside. I prefer actually outdoor concerts to indoor concerts, because you're not getting all that reverberation off of the walls. But it was very similar to that listening experience. And if you go to live events, you'll know what I'm talking about. But it's It's, you know, it's very forward, it's very accurate, it's true to, you know, the instruments that are on the stage and that singer. But me personally, being there for an hour or 2 hours or however long that event is, it's like, okay, I've kind of had enough, right? You know, I was like, this is cool, this is fun. Um, but it's not something that I want to stay there and listen to for long periods of time. And I kind of equate that to what the Gryphon is. So if you're looking for something that's very accurate, true to the source, forward, powerful, the Gryphon is a great product for you. Um, you know, another thing to note with that Gryphon product is if you like bass, it does a phenomenal job. It's a very powerful amp for the bass frequencies. It's quick, it's very tight. There's a lot of good bass. It's accurate. Um, you know, there's a lot of different tonalities that come through in the bass of the Diablo 300 too. So it's not just like a one flat bass note. It's got some good texture to it. I'd say that it does extremely well, but I would say that it is very forward. And that's, you know, I've actually talked to a few different dealers. I actually, you know, sold that DAC. Luckily, there was a gentleman that was interested in adding that to his current Diablo, and he said, you know, why are you selling it? And I kind of told him my whole story. It's like I didn't end up going with the Diablo. He's like, you know, I'd say that's accurate. It is a very forward amplifier, and so, you know, I'm just one opinion out of millions in the world, but hopefully that, you know, that can kind of help put a descriptor to that Gryphon Diablo 300. I'm assuming the 333 is similar. It's got more power to it, but I'm assuming the sound signature is similar. Again, I'm assuming. I have not heard the new Diablo 333, so take that with a grain of salt. Back onto the INT 250. So after hearing that Gryphon, now I'm like, what's next? I really enjoyed the sound of that Boulder 866. I love the tonality of it. It was so rich and so warm. You know, it was just the vocals and the you know, horns and saxophone and trumpets. It's like this wonderful tonality that you can sit down and listen to for hours on end. And so the only thing that was, I was really hesitant on that Boulder 866 was, you know, I really thought that it just was, I guess to put it in my terms, an incomplete. It wasn't quite finished. I don't think it's a quite finished product. To me, it's lovely to look at. It's got all the features built in. It's a one-stop shop if you want it to be. But to me, it seemed like it lacked power. I do think it needed ventilation. Like the whole thing is closed in, and it got pretty darn hot to touch. So like surprisingly hot. Whether that's good for it or bad for it, I don't know. I mean, to me, it seems like heat isn't necessarily good for everything. But anyway, so that was part of it, my decision with that. The other part was like, to me, it seemed like it needed a remote, and I complained about that. But the other part, I think it needed more pre-outs on the back for more connection devices, and definitely like sub devices. So you're not having to subwoofer devices. So you're not having to. It needed sub outs, so you're not having to rig it to the actual speaker terminals. Again, it's a piece that you can put all that stuff together. I just, you know, felt that it was kind of an incomplete piece. I loved the tonality with it. I think it could have used more power. It seemed like it just needed a little more oomph, especially after listening to like the Macintosh, where the Mac wears its power on its sleeve. I love the details and the tonality of that Boulder, but it was after something a little bit more in the power department. And so I kind of got looking around and asking around, and I came upon this Past Labs. And I'm going to Quentin Tarantino to the end of this video. So if you don't want to hear me ramble, you can just listen to this piece right here and then skip the rest of it. But this is the amp that I've actually ended up with. So this is my long-term amp. I did end up purchasing it. I found it to demo, which is awesome. So I wasn't committed to it. But I ended up keeping it because I like it so much. And basically how I came on this was I was asking dealers, you know, across the country, since I don't have this available to me here locally, I loved the Boulder. I loved the Luxman, except that it was a little bit too, there's too much excitement in that treble area. I love the details that I was able to hear, but I want the warmth of the Macintosh. I want the warmth of the Boulder, but I want to hear those details. I want power. I'm using them with Wilson Sabrinas now, but hopefully I want to use this integrated in some of their larger speakers, whether it was the Vet or moving up to the Wilson Sashas. What do you recommend? And so they were recommending the past Labs. And so I said, it's like, I'll try it. Again, one of my number one criterias was warmth and natural sound to the presentation. And so this was up. I've got some quick notes here on this, like how I can describe the listening session. It's interesting because again, I've had this for 8 months. This is a long-term listen. And a quick note to this too is like you'll see some of the room treatments in the background. This is just a start to my room treatments. I know that it was extremely echoey. It's still echoey in here. I'm slowly putting this all together, so that's kind of the fun part. I don't want to go crazy on room treatments just for the looks of it. But one caveat to this is like, well, you like it so much better than all the other ones because you finally added room treatments. These are recent. So all of these notes that I have taken, everything that I'm describing about this was actually the same as all of the other integrated amps that I reviewed. And that was that I didn't have the room treatments in place. So they are now, so it's continually improving and getting better. But it was an equal level reviewing stage with these integrated amps. So I just did want to point that out. Back to my quick example here. So it was at the end of the day, all of the chores were done, all of the work was done. The sun was going down. We were sitting in my living room, my wife and my son. My wife and I were on the couch. The back of our house faced west. So the only thing in my living room are a couch and a couple chairs and a fireplace and a piano. I purposely didn't have any kind of a TV or electronics or any kind of other distraction there. I wanted it to be a place of like you come to relax, you come to talk with people when they come over. I feel like we have so many distractions with screens and TVs and phones and all of that kind of stuff. And that's kind of part of why I like this hobby too. It's kind of a escape from all of the hustle and bustle of life, right? But the best way that I can describe this in an experience, this amplifier in an experience, is we were all sitting there, sun was going down, we had no lights on, other than the music light of the piano shining down. Everything kind of started to have a shadow and this nice warm glow of the sun setting, this orange, like just warmth to the room, right? If you've experienced that. And my son was off playing 7 years in this like silhouette and glow from the piano light, almost like a candle light, right? And we were just sitting there totally relaxed, engulfed in the music, proud that he's playing the musical instrument. And it was just wonderful. And I thought, what a great way to compare the past Labs. You just get sucked into the music. You get to sit there and enjoy it. You're no longer reviewing the music. You're no longer trying to be analytical about, hearing this or hearing that. You just totally get sucked in, engulfed, and just get to sit back, take a deep breath, and enjoy the full music. And I'd say that that's such a great example of how to describe this amplifier. It's just wonderful to sit down and listen to, hours on end. And that's what I was looking for. That's what I had with that Yamaha, that I was able to sit down and enjoy for hours on end, that natural sound. I wanted to be able to do that with the Mac. I was just hoping for something, which was wonderful too. I was just hoping for something a little bit more detailed. The Boulder, again, that was perfect. I would actually say that, and even the dealers describe this, is that it's actually not as warm as the Boulder. The Boulder's got a wonderful tonality. If I could take everything about this amplifier and make it the tonality of that Boulder, but with the power of the past Labs, I would totally do that. But it's not like night and day difference. It's a couple steps up or tiers up, if whatever a tier is, but a couple tiers up in the warmth scale from that Boulder. So less warm. But great detail, wonderful musical separation. The power is there. You can just feel like when you have a powerful amp, you don't have to turn it up all the way or turn it up a lot to feel power. It's just there. It's hard to describe, but the speakers just have this um, the amps have this control over the speakers, and the speakers just have this presence in the room. You're kind of engulfed, and it's a larger sound stage, and it's not so strained and refined. It's just kind of a larger, it's almost like going to a larger venue and listening to music in a larger space where you're surrounded by the music, I guess, if I could describe it. It's not as like wear the power on your sleeve as the Mac. Like the Mac's awesome. It's always the power. And I don't know if it's those transformers, the wattage doesn't change on Mac amplifiers. Like if it's a 200 watt amplifier, it's 200 into 8 ohms, into 4 ohms, into 2 ohms. Like that doesn't change. And it's almost like that power is always on. Like it's a cool experience. And I think that that's why the Mac has such a good following. And I love Mac too. Again, I was just looking for more of that detail. This doesn't have that much just like always power on. It's very close though. It's like you can tell that there's a big transformer in this Pass INT 250. I made some notes here, so I just don't want to miss anything. Again, just trying to be accurate. This again isn't a professional review, just trying to help people make decisions out there. Again, it was difficult for me, and I didn't find a lot of reviews out there that weren't like professional reviews. Just and I encourage you, like anybody watching this too, if it's helpful, people. It seems like people are enjoying, just honest, open opinions about these things without any bias to it or any incentive to it, which is personally me, and you can tell in the quality of these videos, but it's definitely helpful for me. I think I go through and my wife's like, why are you watching another review? And I'm like, I'm not, babe. I think I've seen this review like 3 times. I keep going back and watching these things. Maybe I can pick out something different. But because a lot of my purchases, it has come as like trying to get the opinions and advice and support of other people out there, because I don't have like a big network and I don't have a lot of these dealers to be able to go and listen to that. So I'm kind of going off on a rambling tangent again, but hopefully that's kind of like shares where I'm coming at with these reviews. I personally just feel like it's just again a very musical, wonderful piece. And when people were saying musical, like what is that? They're kind of describing that Class A, Class warm sound that you get, maybe even kind of a tubey sound. And that was hard for me too, because I'm like, what's a tubey sound? Like I don't want this thing to be dull, right? And they're like, no, it's not dull, but you get that tubey sound. And I think part of that description, what they were saying, is from the distortion that tubes create. It's a little bit different than a typical Class A or Class AB amplifier. And Nelson Pass, if you've watched any of his videos, I call him, the professor, or the mad scientist, or a combination of the both. He's really, really interesting to watch on his lectures and his write-ups out there on amplifier design. I mean, you can try and glean a little bit without being an electrical engineer. It was a little bit difficult to grasp some of it. But basically what he was saying, and kind of what I said in that Luxman review, is like, I never thought it was like bright, but there was something about it that didn't resonate well with my personal ears. And part of that might have been the way that Luxman does feedback. And all amps have distortion, and whether or not that distortion plays into first order, second order harmonics or third order harmonics depends on how that sounds to a certain person. And Nelson Pass feels that, you know, he really focuses on those first and second order harmonics from the distortion. And, you know, I think that that's what people are describing as warm and 2B sound. And just to me, putting just a layman's terms description to it is just natural. Like horns have this grainy, natural presence to them where they're not like a trumpet plays or a saxophone plays and someone's really jamming on it and you're like, ooh, that sounds cool, but like I want it to go back to the other parts of the music. You know, you're not like, ooh, that's, you know, I don't want to listen to it. Saxophones play on this, trumpets play on this, female vocals play on this. You're like, that sounds nice. Like that is cool. It's warm. It's not fatiguing at all. It's just natural and not like amplified natural, like I was describing the other amp in the beginning of this, but just a very inviting. They're in your room. You know, it might even be a kind of a dampened room that they're playing in, and you're sitting in the same room without it being amplified. I say that's the description of the Pass INT 250. The musical warm side of neutral sound, I've got that down here on my notes. Again, it's focusing on first and second order distortion and harmonics. The bass. The bass from this, I would say, isn't as plentiful as the Macintosh, but it's very powerful. It's very present in the room, and it's not bass that's overtaking the presentation of the music. I would say, if anything, with this Pass, everything is very well blended. You know, and I think that me describing some of those other amplifiers, that's kind of what I was picking out, is like maybe the highs were too accentuated. Maybe the mids were too forward in my face. Maybe there was too much bass and not enough mids or treble to the presentation. I think with this Pass, like out of all of these amps that I've reviewed, this has been the most well blended amplifier. Like nothing is accentuated, and maybe you want that, like, and that's a good takeaway from this video. Like maybe you want something accentuated, maybe this isn't the piece for you then. But I would say everything is very well, vocals, highs, trumpets, cymbals, drums, bass frequencies, it's all very well blended with this amplifier, and I really enjoy that about it. It's a very immersive sound I've got written down here in my notes. Organic is another true rich natural presentation I've got here in my notes. You know, I'm coming up with this stuff here. People are going to start thinking I'm becoming an audiophile or something. You're just surrounded by music, very good separation. I don't think you're going, I would say that I don't think you're going to get the sense of place that you do with that Luxman. That Luxman, again, I'm going back to this, and like it's really amazing how it makes a separation of the music. You get this sense that you're in a recording hall, if that's where it was recorded at, or a concert hall or a recording studio. Like you can really tell the difference with those. Like the Luxman, like you get a very defined sense of texture of something. You know, in my example, I put someone tapping their foot on the stage in a presentation. You can kind of feel that it's like not just a bass frequency, but you can actually feel the texture of that sole of that shoe against a wood stage floor. You know, this air and background ambiance of that Luxman, it's pretty amazing. But I think it comes at a sacrifice. I don't think you're going to get that sense of space. You get a little bit. You get a little bit. I would say it's like combining all of these amplifiers together, like the power of the Mac, the details of the Luxman, the richness of the Boulder, and then wrapping them all into one, to me, perfect integrated amp. This is where we're at with this. Again, nothing is like calling itself out. It's just a wonderful presentation that you can listen to. I left, as far as speaker placement, I left the speakers where they were as far as toe in and toe out goes, and forward and backward placement, as they were with the Boulder. I actually felt that it was perfect. And by doing that, if you didn't watch that review, I kind of towed them out away from my ears, so the tweeters weren't focusing right on my ears. They were pointed more outward with that Luxman, because I felt like I didn't want to hear that much treble frequencies. And then I towed them back in. Well, I towed them back in with the Mac. I towed them out with the Luxman, then I towed them back in with the Boulder. I left it the same. And I think because, it's a perfect blend of treble and mid-range frequencies where, they could be more towed in towards my ears, not like directly pointed at my ears toe in, but definitely much more in than they were with the Luxman. So take that as a quick note when you're interviewing, when you're trying out these integrated amplifiers, is that you may have to move your speakers around to get the perfect sound that you're looking for, because they do create a different presentation in how you want your room to sound and how you want your speaker placement to be. The remote, since I like to talk about these remotes, this is a big piece, and I would say that that's true with the whole theme of this past lab. Like, it is not diminutive by any means in size or shape or form or sound even. I would say that that's true with the remote as well. So if I hold this thing up, you can see it's a really cool remote. It's a solid piece of machined aluminum, and it's hefty. You don't want to drop this thing on your foot. I guess I should have weighed it before, but it's a hefty piece of remote. I like the size of it. Like, it fits in I've got kind of large hands, but it fits in the size of my hand well. A couple things with this is that the buttons, like on like remotes that I've really liked, like the Luxman, for example, they've been rubbery type buttons, like a soft, quiet, nice touch to them. These are really kind of plasticky buttons. I don't know if you can hear this button, but you can see that it's kind of I'd say that's the only thing that I don't prefer about the remote, is like the buttons could have like a better feel. If you can hear that. The other thing to note with this is that if you look at the back of it, these little things I added to this so it wouldn't scratch my white lacquer furniture here, because these screws aren't all the way recessed into here, and if you're moving it around on stuff, it could scrape. So if you're gonna add these little things, I'd say that that's helpful. Plus, it makes it sit on something quiet and nice and flat. These screws are here because you have to unscrew these 4 screws to take the batteries in and out. So it's not just like a little quick release little piece like some remotes are. And part of that is I didn't want like a metal or a plastic piece to be integrated with the rest of the metal, which I think you have to do for those doors. So it's a nice remote. Let's go into a couple of my other pieces with this. Let's go into looks. If you remember from my Boulder review, like, it had a screen on it, which was cool. It showed the screen art and stuff, like very like up to date and modern in design. But again, I wanted to escape screens. I want to come down here and just totally be lost in the music and just have something kind of old school, I guess, if you will. I'm very geared towards like being untechy when I escape work. And I'd say that this is a great piece to do that. This was never on my radar to demo because I was like, I don't know that I like the looks. It's so old school looking, industrial, I guess, if you will, and that's kind of a cool function. To me, it looked very old school, like an old school Krell amp with these giant fins on the side, and this giant aluminum plate on the front. But it's really grown on me. Like, I think it even looks good in this modern space. I love the blue glow. It's very soothing and calming. This is not a meter, a typical meter. This needle does not bounce around like you would think. It's a bias meter. So basically, this is really geared to a Class A sound, and then it leaves Class A and goes into an AB when you really need the power and you're cranking it up. I listen to this anywhere in the 25 range is where my normal listening is, and then I'll go up, like if I'm really being crazy, I'll go up to 40. When with the Wilson Sabrinas, that is plenty loud down here. I'll actually turn it down. My normal listening is anywhere from 25 to 30 on this, so I'm not moving the volume control on this thing very much. I have never got this needle to move, and and whether that bias plays into the volume side or um, the ohm rating of the speakers, or just requiring just sheer more. I've never got it to move. And the Sabrinas, they're not an efficient speaker to get them to go loud, and they're dipping down into close to the 2 ohm range in certain frequencies. I think it's like 100 hertz where they're dipping down into that. Again, again, I'm not an electrical engineer, but how that plays into this, I've never got that needle to move. Which I'm told is biased from A to AB on this. So if that helps describe what that thing is, it doesn't move. It's pleasing to look at. It's not as exciting as the meters bouncing around. And again, that was kind of my initial requirement, is I want something that was old school and had those meters bouncing around, but this doesn't have it. So it's still very pleasing. The looks have grown onto me. There was one review that said these are like sharp, they'll cut you. There's a resonance to them, but see, I'm no cuts. they're not like razor sharp. I suppose if you got your silk shirt snagged on one of them while you're moving it, you could. But who's going to move this thing in a silk shirt? So I don't know. Somebody might. Beware, you might snag your silk shirt. So I like the clean layout with the design. The only thing that you get here on the front is a power button. Input 1, input 2, input 3, input 4. There are 4 RCAs on the back of this. I'll show a picture of it. And there are 2 XLRs on the back of it. And that's all you get with this. There's no balance. There is no tone controls. It's very much so an integrated amp with or a true amplifier with some hookups on the back of it. And I think that that's kind of cool. All of the room in there was designed for this giant cheesecake-sized toroidal transformer. And it's just very simplistic in its design. I never really used tone controls that much on the other pieces, and I felt if I had to use them, there was something I was trying to correct. And so with that said, like on the Mac, I used those tone controls on the upper frequencies to try and get more treble out of it. And on the Luxman, I was turning those tone controls down. On the Boulder, I never messed with them. I'm not sure, now that I'm saying that, I don't know there's tone controls on the Boulder either. On the Yamaha, I never messed with the tone controls other than to see what they did. On this, I don't feel like I need tone controls either. And one of the things, like if you do need tone controls, I'm streaming to this right now. My streamer has different selections that you can make. I think there's like 4 or 5 different selections that you can make, whether you want that presentation forward or a more softer presentation to that. If anything, I can use those to change it very, very little. Otherwise, to me, it's just a perfect sound and I don't need the tone controls. But if you like to play with them, the tone controls, and change that sound for different songs, I totally get that, because there's a lot of different recordings out there and some of them are not very good. And you want to play with those tone controls to accentuate something in that recording. If it's your favorite song, it's like, man, I wish this would sound better. You want just those tone controls. Just know you cannot do that with the INT 250, so that may knock it off your list. The other thing with the design, there are screw holes on top, so it's not like the Luxman. I mean, to me, I don't think you can beat the build quality of the Luxman product and the audiophile jewelry of that. So it's hard to compare anything to that. I mean, maybe a D'Agostino. There are, there's a big solid top plate to this. This is a giant size of aluminum. This is an aluminum knob. Like it's got little indents or detents in the um, steps here, the volume steps. This looks like it's black plastic. It's black machined aluminum, machined aluminum buttons, no plastic or rubbery buttons. Boulder. Um, I don't think that that's glass. I'm not going to touch it, but I think it's an acrylic. I never touch it anyway, and it's been fine. The build quality of this thing is awesome. It's huge. I'm going to put up a soda can next to it to give you a size perspective. I'm just kidding. Hang on a second. Let's get the full size. That was a mini. It's still huge. It's a big piece. This is a full size 12-ounce can of ginger beer to give you a size. The other thing that I didn't like about it, I'll talk about this. The top plate, I'll pull this off, is kind of resonant. So I don't know if that affects sound or not, but it's just kind of one of those things that might start to bother you if you're an audiophile, especially after you've had Luckman gear where it's like don't when you hit the top. So I put this HRS plate, which, this is kind of like one of those fun things to buy in the audio once you like just want little knickknacks to customize it. Makes a huge difference. So, if that helps as far as the build quality goes, the back speaker connections are amazing. Like I'll show a picture of them, but you can like grip your whole fingers around them and click them down. And then they get to this ratchet section, so you can't over tighten them. So it goes tighten them, click, 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 click. It's awesome. And they're holding these transparent cables in there, which are like the size of small garden hoses, and they're holding them in there tight, and they're not falling out, which is really awesome. Couple other quick notes on this thing. I think that those are the best speaker connections that I've had or seen. Boulder's got some nice ones that are like wing nuts on their on the back of them, but these are probably the first or second best. They're maybe tied between those two. This has got sub out connections. The sub out power going to the sub is really good. It keeps the sub on. If you've got one of those ones that turns on and off with a signal going to it, you can tell that it's got power going to the sub as well. USA made construction. I like that. It's made here in the United States. You can call PASS and you can get all kinds of information. I emailed them. They had a response within a matter of, I think it was next day email. You can call and talk to them that same day. They'll spend half an hour on the phone talking to me, if not more. It's almost like they enjoyed the conversation too, of me asking them questions. It was just a wonderful experience to be able to do that, and you can do that with Macintosh easily. You can do that with Boulder easily. With Luxman, you're calling the distributor and talking to them. I mean, I suppose you could call Japan. There are factories in Japan. I think you might have to speak Japanese. But these USA companies, for us that are here in the United States, it's pretty cool that the customer service, they're kind of a niche, smaller organization. It's not like trying to get a hold of a Yamaha America, for example, which is next to impossible. It's just a really good overall experience. Some of the negatives, again, don't drop the remote on your foot is what I have here. If you use the RCAs, don't forget to put the jumpers back in. I'll read you a quick piece here. And this part of this came from me talking to him because I was asking him, hey, do you need to move this, or is this a good amp to be able to use with larger speakers? Because I do want to move up to Sasha's as I keep saving and saving and saving and saving. But I wanted to ask them, like, is this powerful enough? And they said, yeah, I mean, absolutely. This is a great piece to be able to use. It's not necessarily the power initially, but it's like, how loud do you want to? So if you're listening to it super loud, the Sasha's dip down to you know, close to 2 hertz, like the Sabrinas, but they do it at a lower frequency, like 7. He's like, you know, that could be 70 or 80% of the music if you're listening to EDM at loud volumes. Then this might not be enough power for you, but what I'm using it for in my size of room, in my space, that would be plenty. Again, I'm listening to it at like the 25 mark. I wanted to read this from this manual too while we're talking about the connections. You can hook this amplifier up to any normal loudspeaker without any danger of damage. Note, however, that both the positive red output connection and the negative black output connection are live. There is no ground reference at the speaker terminals. The speaker, the black negative speaker terminal must never be treated as a ground. This can be important when you're hooking up active subwoofers to the output of the amp. If you need a signal ground connection, then use the white ground terminal provided on the rear of the panel. That's important because it is set up a little bit different when you're hooking up like an REL sub or a REL sub. When I was calling, this goes back, I'm doing a very talkative roundabout discussion to me calling them, but they said you're not going to hurt this hooking it up to larger speakers. The only thing that we see, like not the only thing, but the majority of the reasons that we only see these things come back into the factory for repair is that someone hooked up one of those active subwoofers, like a REL to it incorrectly. It's not that you can't hook it up to it. Just remember that the pass is set up a little bit different and that you can't use those speaker terminals as a ground. The other thing is that if you're using input 1 and input 2, those are the XLRs, you technically shouldn't use the XLR width to and not that you would, but hooking an XLR up to a source piece and an RCA to that same source piece, because there's a ground issue there. If you use RCAs in input 1 and input 2, make sure that there's little brass jumpers that go in the XLR pieces if you're not using the XLR. If you're using the RCA only in input 1 and input 2, which are also the XLR inputs, remember to always use those jumpers that they provide you. So that's another caveat to this thing that's a little bit different than other amplifiers. The only other thing that I would say that it's weird, it's kind of wonky, is that when this is warming up, and this is probably maybe a 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the listening session, since I turn these pieces off, that's just my OCD. When they're warming up, this thing will make it's almost like a loud relay click. And it's almost kind of like that loud relay click or expansion in there somewhere, or fin resonating off the fins or something weird. I think it's a normal pass thing. They actually say that if yours is doing that, once it warms up, there's little screws to these. Loosen the screws once it's warm and then snug them up. Something's expanding in there, but I Googled that and I was like, what the heck was that? What'd I just do? That was what my initial impression was of it. There's a number of other people with pass labs that say, yeah, it's just kind of the pass experience where it just, makes that relay resonant sound once it's warmed. It just does it once. It's like ping, and then you go on listening, but it's just kind of quirky thing to pass, at least to mine, and some others out there. So just a note on that if it happens to you. I think that's it. One of the other things, I guess, that I'll mention, and this is a lot to this, where's my remote? If you like to totally shut off your screen displays to your amplifier, you cannot do that with this. Where is it on here? Display. You can shut off the numbers, but you can never turn off the blue glow. I guess they want you to be able to see that meter on there, it's fine. It's soft. It's not bright. The numbers are brighter than that. So that's kind of like a good thing. If I could pick one to dim out, those would be the numbers to dim, or what the product to dim. It's very heavy. It's 105 pounds. So team lift this. There's actually handles on the back. So you can grab the front of this. The front of it's the heaviest, and then there's handles on the back that you can grab to have your another person in your home help you lift it. Otherwise, I'm stopping on the Pass INT 250 for a long time. Again, I've had it 8 months, and hopefully to have it for many more months and years to come. I'm enjoying it that much. So I think that's all. Thanks for watching. Again, hopefully this has helped. Drop a comment below. This is all helping us out. You know, we've had a lot of good comments on the other one, a lot of good discussion. That's wonderful. It's awesome and it's fun. I don't have a lot of friends in this audiophile hobby anymore. And so I guess it's kind of fun to have those conversation points and hear other people's views too, because again, I'm just an opinion in a sea of millions. But again, hopefully it helps. Thanks. Keep up the listening. Relax, enjoy, sit back in the seat, enjoy the music. We'll see you. Thanks. Bye. There's always something I forget. And then how could I not forget it? How could I just keep talking for that many minutes and still forget something? I don't know. But anyway, one last point I wanted to make, and this is kind of onto a dislike of the Pass, but it's not really that big of a deal. And maybe it's even a protection kind of a thing. Whenever you power this off and then turn it back on, no matter what input you had, if it's 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, or what volume you had it on, it always resets itself once you power it back on to 0 volume and input 1. So just another quick note, you know, one of those things you live with this, but it might be a protection thing, especially with the volume, that it goes back down to 0. So you're not like something's playing, a source is playing and it's cranked up to like 50 or 40 or whatever. That's really loud. So what I do, like now I only have a streaming device hooked up to it. You know, hopefully we've started to actually collect albums and we don't have a turntable. So that might be down the road. But anyway, whatever your favorite source is, hook it up to 1. Because that's what it's going to revert to once you fire it back up. If you're one of those folks that turns it off and then turns it back on when you want to listen to, like me. That's it. Thanks. See ya. Bye. Wait a minute. There's one other thing that I forgot. I know it's hard to believe after all of that talking. Some of the people ask me, does the Pass get hot? Because it's a complaint on there that some of their Pass labs get really hot and warm up the room. That might be some of their like pure Class A stuff that gets that hot, as Class A is known for that. But this Class AB INT 250, it doesn't get any warmer than let's say the Macintosh, or any warmer than the Luxman. It's actually cooler than the Boulder. So that's just another quick note on it. I think it's honestly the same as any other integrated amplifier out there. It's warm, like you can, when you put your hand on it after listening for 2 hours, but by no means is it hot. So hope that helps too.
Once I was 7 years old, my mama told me, go make yourself some friends or you'll be lonely. Once I was 7 years old. It was a big, big world, but we thought we were bigger, pushing each other to the limits. We were learning quicker. By 11, smoking herb and drinking burning liquor. Never rich, so we were out to make that steady figure. Once I was 11 years old, my daddy told me, go get yourself a wife or you'll be lonely. Once I was 11 years old. Songs, I started writing stories. Something about that glory just always seemed to bore me, 'cause only Mama, mama, rise. Mama, 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 mama. Mama, 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 rise. Mama, mama, mama. Well, it's early in the morning. Sugar when I rise. Said it's early in the morning. Manda, get up, Manda.